Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, reality check. We're here on my property, Ken Swartz, and Ken is the guy that produces this stuff, C60. You want to take this stuff every day, really helps you. I just went to the doctor. I've been taking this stuff for like 3 years now, and I went to the doctor and got checked up, and I am clean.
So yeah, that's shopc60.com if you want to go check it out.
Yep, great stuff. So Ken, you were friends with James Constable, right?
Yes, Trevor James Constable.
Trevor James Constable, and he was a guy who um he was a radar operator, I believe, and he kept seeing things on the radar in the Navy, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, he was a New Zealander
Yeah,
that had moved to the United States, and then he did that during he was in World War II.
yeah,
And then he retired. Well, he didn't retire. I guess he gave out of the military, and then he worked for like 20 something years on a ship called the Maui.
that's right.
And he went from Honolulu to Long Beach
That's right.
as a cargo vessel, and he was a radio officer. And but he had been involved with a lot of things. Actually, I didn't know, but at the time, I had an uncle, Colonel Tolliver, and Trevor James Constable and him wrote a bunch of books about World War I and World War II fighter pilots.
Right.
And so there's my 2 degrees of separation. But he also uh, he also started discovering because he was a photographer as well,
Yes, he was.
and he was photographing these things in the infrared. He used it, especially you get the 18A filter, which gets you the infrared and the ultraviolet and completely blocks out visible light. And so he just came into discovery of a whole world of these invisible beings.
Yep.
And he wrote a book, They Live in the Sky,
Great book.
and also The Cosmic Pulse of Life.
Really good book.
And so those, yeah, and you can get those. Those are actually the They Live in the Sky was out of print for decades.
Yes, it was.
But now you can get it online.
Yep. And great books, and I highly recommend it. And the reason that we're talking about this is because there's a new study, which I'm going to link here below, that's just come out in February 2024 by, I don't know, 25 different scientists who examined evidence from NASA and have concluded um, that what James Trevor Constable is talking about is actually true, and that these things are everywhere. And what they did was they took the tether I think it was the last time or the time before that you were on, we showed the tether video, and I'll probably put it in here. But anyway, so let's talk about the tether incident, and that way we can then go forward and show the rest of that, how the study took that tether incident and ran with it to show that in fact we are surrounded by literally millions of these invisible plasmoids.
Well, the tether was a thing. They had a little ball on the end of it, and they're going to put a wire while they're in orbit.
The space shuttle.
Yeah, it's space shuttle, and they're on space shuttle. And of course, any wire moving through a magnetic field will generate a current.
Yep.
And so they started stringing it out, and it went out, I don't know how many, 4 kilometers or something.
Quite a ways.
And but the charge that it built up on it was so much, it eventually just basically fried out the attachment to the space shuttle, and it was now a free tether.
It almost knocked out the space shuttle.
Yeah.
So much power came through that line that they had no idea what they were doing, obviously. And I heard from an astronaut that was involved in it that it took them an hour to get everything back up on the space shuttle because it's literally blacked out their computers and everything.
Yeah, so that's not a good thing. Originally, so part of the design, they were thinking on putting it on satellites. Like before a satellite is going to get, is used up, they just pull out this little line with a tether, and that creates drag, and that would pull the satellite back in basically to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere.
Right.
But it made a little bit more power than they suspected. They're going 18,000 miles an hour or something out there. So, that's generating a little more power than
Well,
I imagined.
so anyway, so the thing broke off and started floating off into space.
It started recoiling and was like going, it was kind of like coiled up, and it was bouncing back and forth, and
it was oscillating.
Yeah.
And generating even a bigger charge. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, come literally hundreds of these spherical plasmoids. And they're surrounding it and dancing around
Yeah, they
it.
pulse. You can see every one of them is pulsing.
Mhm.
And that's part of the thing, Trevor James Constable, the cosmic pulse of life.
That's right.
Because that's one of the things that you can tell things alive, because we pulse, we breathe in and out. Our heart beats in and out. That's when you see that pulsing, it's usually a sign of life.
Because doesn't the sun do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't the sun collapse
Oh yeah. Let's
and
do the sun cycle spots.
it's like
Yeah.
every day the sun
Mhm.
loses like 150
Mhm.
miles or something of its
Yep.
diameter. And
It just, yeah, but it also pulses, and we see that in the sunspot cycles. So, but is the sun alive?
well, the Egyptians thought that.
Yeah.
So so anyway, this caused all these objects, these plasmoids, glowing plasmoids, hovering around this tethered wire that's floating in space. Um, is actually what initiated this idea that they would look further into the idea that there's possibly living creatures that are not biological.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really undeniable. I
It
mean, because
is.
they're like translucent and pulsing. You'd see them going behind the tether. You could see them going in front of the tether. They interact with each other. It was just, and there were just hundreds of them. It was just and obviously showing signs of intelligent or
Yep. Sentience.
action, sentience. Yes.
So then they started looking further into NASA imagery in this study, and they discovered more and more of these things. And they concluded that there's a whole another life form that exists that is not biological. And what's really interesting about it is that this plasma creates positive and negative sheathing, which individuates. So you have a blob of plasma, but inside the plasma is individuating into smaller individuals. And they're literally separated by a skin of electromagnetic energy. It's quite amazing, actually.
Yeah, and I think from the NASA footage, they'd find they're like flocks or
Yeah,
schools of them.
yeah,
Maybe if you use the
schools.
fish thing, and like especially if there's really big thunderstorms on Earth, they'd all kind of
They'll,
gather and then they'd dive into the thunderstorms
yep,
because maybe it's the electrical energy that
that's what they're
thunderstorms are
doing. They're
producing.
consuming the
Yeah,
electrical, and that's why UFOs are seen frequently around power lines and things, because what we think of, I'm not saying that there aren't aliens or anything like that. And I'm not saying that I understand what UFOs are entirely, but I think most of the UFOs that we're seeing that are not ours, our own craft, are actually these plasmoids.
yeah. And there's also the intriguing concept of the metallic life forms. And
Yes.
that's actually in his book. I think it's the Cosmic Pulse of Life. He describes a incident where these guys are flying in a small, I think it's a Piper Cub or a real Cessna out in the Arizona, and they have those big mesas
Yep.
out there that you see the classic thing, and they see on the one mesa, they see like a disc, like
Yep.
a metallic disc parked there with something damaged, like a piece out of it, and they kind of circle around, and the mesa is big enough to land, so they land the little Piper Cub on the mesa, and they get out and they go over to this disc, and it's, I don't know, it's like 20, 30 feet across, they said.
Yep.
And it had this big hunk out of it, the side of it, and it was like bubbling. There was like almost like metallic looking bubble
Yep.
foam coming out. And they were sitting there, tried to get moved, but when they got close, it tried to do something, but it was just too damaged. And so they were sitting around there, 10, 15 minutes watching, and then this much larger disc showed up and hovered, and they of course backed off, and it went right above the smaller disc, and then three arms came out and grabbed it and pulled it inside to the larger disc, and then it was there for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden the other disc belched out this most stench, the worst stench they'd ever smelled, like
Cosmic fart.
cosmic fart, yes. And then flew off after it was done with that, and then it flew off. So
Interesting. And that's very similar to the Maury Island incident where these guys are out fishing outside of Vashon Island, near Maury Island and in Washington State, and they saw this that they didn't know what it was, a disc or something. It came by and it was like literally crapping out metal. Some of it fell on the deck of the ship or the boat. And then they called up the government and told them about the incident. And two guys from the Air Force came out and gathered up the metallic objects. And then their plane crashed on their way back to California.
Yeah, and that brought up an incident. I was actually at I think it was Contact in the Desert maybe, and this guy there had been a similar thing in Grand Junction, Colorado. This guy was seeing this like UFO thing flying, and then this metal, some bright object was exited out and fell to the ground. And fortunately, he went out there looking for it, and it had fallen into a bunch of bushes and started a fire. And so that's how he was
So,
able to find.
it was
Yeah,
plasma.
yeah, it was a piece of metal, and but it was super hot. And then and then he had actually he had it and he showed it around, and they cut like a piece off the top for examination, and then kind of buffed it so you could see it. So I actually held an alien turd in my hands, and and the problem was at the conference, he'd put it in the little safe you always get in your hotel room,
Yep.
and he'd punch it in, and then the morning when they get up to bring it out because he was showing it around, they couldn't open the safe because the energy had been drained, and or something had gone wrong. So they had the guy come up with the master key and open it up. That happened like 2 times in a row.
Huh.
So
I think it was like creating a magnetic field
or
maybe?
well, something, or it could be like those etheric fields. It's like a lot of times, like with the crop circles, people go to these crop circles and they bring their cameras, and then their cameras don't work.
Yeah.
But they take the camera out of the crop circle, and maybe after 20 minutes or something, it starts to work again.
I always thought that maybe the cameras were getting magnetized.
It's almost like a fluid because it's it's like when what happens with I actually had Nicky make this, supposedly the great grandson of Tesla, but that's another story. Make this it's called the Swartz meter, and because what it is, it's like if you heat something up, if a circuit heats up, it increases resistance.
That's right.
And so there's this etheric energy or prana, chi, or whatever they cause.
Yeah.
And if you get high concentrations,
Plasma.
it causes resistance and electrical currents, and so the voltage in the device will drop. And
Right.
then, but if you take it away, whatever it is kind of evaporates away. And then once it evaporates away, then the voltage levels will rise again because it's like the heat went away, and then the thing works again. And so that thing only worked one time, and that was in Morrison, Colorado. There'd been this, I think it had been the postal office or something at the time. And during the Spanish American flu, like in 1918, everybody got sick, went there to die,
Really?
basically. And so just like a bunch of people had died there. And so they actually put it in there, and it actually could see the change in resistance.
So the question is, can plasma reach a kind of solidity where it becomes metal-like?
Well, I think that's I think a different type. I think that maybe people somewhere, some technological civilization, maybe, or maybe they evolved, built metal like AIs or metal like robot life forms. And then the robot life forms turned into literally life forms. And one type
It's
of robot
replicating.
would eat would they replicated, but then they were eaten, but then they'd eat each other. And
Wow.
so, and that's actually brings up, you remember those
They-
spheres they find from 2.9 billion year old spheres in
Yes,
South Africa?
in South Africa, yeah.
Yeah, they found these little spheres, and they're really weird. They
They
have like a stripe around the
Yeah,
side.
they
They got
look-
like a,
They're just like the moon eye apatus.
yes, exactly. And they find them in the old gold deposits.
Yeah. And
And
they're all gone now. They
Yep.
all got stolen.
oh yeah, or yeah, somebody,
Something.
yeah,
Because they're all
something.
gone. They can't find them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And they used to have them. They'd orient themselves, and they looked at the metal. They did tests of the metal, and it wasn't from Earth. It had like an isotopic signature.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
those could have been like eggs from laid by alien metallic life forms. Who knows?
Something like that.
It's totally bizarre.
There's this guy, I forget his name now. He's in Southern California, lives off the coast of Malibu, I think. I had him on the show. Forget his name. Sorry if I forgot your name. And you're a doctor. I know that. And he photographs airplanes that are traveling up and down,
Oh yes.
and these little objects follow them,
Hmm.
and they look like those objects that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
They're like metal. They look like they're metal. They're traveling at around 2,000 miles an hour with no resistance. And every time any airplane flies by, they go up and they check it out. And you got to wonder what's going on there, you know?
Yeah, because they have. I mean, that's the thing. Trevor caused. These things had characteristics of life, whether
Yeah.
it's the pulsing things or the little metal things, and so
Yep.
they're like other forms of life that exist.
Yeah, and it's like the most fascinating subject of all because it throws all physics out the window. I mean, as Robert Temple says in his book on physics, on plasma physics, a good book, A New View of Heaven, I think it's called, that you know, this plasma is 99% of the universe. The solid universe is only 1%. Our physics only covers that 1%. We aren't looking at the rest of it, and we need to start looking at the rest of it, which they are. And that's what this report is, why I'm so thankful for this report, because well, it also shows that these plasmoids are predatory.
Yes, and they actually, in that report, if you read it, there was a witness who actually saw one of them. They actually, these soap bubbles, he called them, in the sky,
Right.
and one of them actually hit the ground, and then just kind of dissolved. He watched it; it kind of dissolved away, and there was like nothing left. And there's another report of that, like these two cops, they got a report
Right.
in. There's this like object, just like 30, 40 feet across, and it's very translucent, but it's all sparkly, and it's just sitting on top of the grass out in the field. And one of the cops finally touches it and like punches a hole in it, and then it just kind of all dissolves. And when it's all gone, there was just barely a trace of moisture or something on the grass.
Yep.
And so these are, I mean, they're made of plasma, but of course, plasma has to be built around matter, which is
Something.
ionized.
Yeah.
And so somehow,
Ionized dust.
yeah,
That's what it is.
and if you go to Trevor's book, he also makes a report where some of the early astronomers saw kind of like these translucent objects. They were up to 100 miles long. They estimated flying in orbit.
Jacques Vallée saw it.
Yeah, the Earth and the Moon.
That's what got Jacques Vallée going into UFOs. Was he was a astronomer? He was looking through the scope and he saw these plasmoids. I'm sure that Jacques Vallée would actually agree with us. That
Yes,
that's what's going on here.
and also there's the thing, the ring makers of Saturn.
Oh my
They
goodness.
have saw these giant objects, but the thing about Saturn's rings are made of ice, which are sublimating. So if you were like one of these creatures and you wanted to get like a drink, you just kind of go hang out at Saturn's rings and grab some of that sublimated water, or do it whatever that's coming off those things. And then so they may not have been like intelligent life forms. Well, they're
Well,
life
they
forms.
seem like they are.
They have intelligence,
Yeah.
but they're not
They have
like
a purpose.
yeah, they're not like
I mean, they can't play chess.
yeah,
but-
exactly. They're not like metal and screws. They're not like
Right.
the concept. They're
That's the thing that we have to get around here.
yeah.
They may appear to be metal and they may actually have metallic qualities, but they're not constructed like we
Yeah, they're not
built-
machines, they're life
Right,
forms,
they're
and that's
life
a totally different. There may be UFO that are machines, right? But then,
Yeah, they
there are some that these things are not. They're not machines. They're
Right.
like life forms. And how do you? Because that just that makes Earth is just part of a greater galactic ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because if these things are coming in and out and they're traveling through space, then we really have never been isolated
No.
as a planet. We're part of a larger galactic ecosystem.
Absolutely. And we are actually plasma. Our brains are plasma,
Yeah.
our blood is plasma. And we come, I believe that we come down, we actually descend down from the plasma cloud, the Kordylewski clouds that are around the Earth, giant plasma clouds. And I believe that that those plasma clouds have sentient beings in them. And those sentient beings, okay, think about this. Starting in the 1950s, we began getting visited by aliens, right? Supposedly. And they came down here and they would abduct people or whatever. And they were deeply concerned about how we were treating the planet, right? Over and over. Oh, you guys are tearing the planet apart. You're doing terrible things to the planet. You've got to stop. That was the message over and over, right? Well, why would aliens be concerned about the planet?
Yeah, unless they lived here.
Unless they lived here. And I think that's what's going on. The plasma beings that we are concerned that we're destroying the place that they need to go to. And their concerns are probably well founded.
Yes. Looking around, you would say that's true.
Yep. And so I think it's just to me, the idea that there's all these living beings all around us and we don't know it. And I believe, by the way, that as we're coming out of the Kali Yuga, which we are right now, we're going to start seeing them more and more and more. And by the way, I saw one right here. It was right above me, right here. It was in December of 2016. I was sitting over there looking through the window and I saw a maybe 20-foot wide diameter, looked like it was made out of smoke. I realize now that the plasma looks like smoke. And it was a corkscrew. It was a rod, essentially, like Jose Escamillo's rods, right? And I saw it race by here. It must have been doing 70, 80 miles an hour. It was at least a mile long. I watched it for at least 5 minutes. And I stupidly didn't run and get a camera. I don't know why I didn't, and I wish I had. And I've seen other plasmoid creatures that looked like manta rays here too. You had to have to catch it in a special light, so it was almost sunset. So the light was coming from a 90-degree angle, and I saw these translucent beings in the sky, and they were like dancing and playing with each other. And they looked just like manta rays. And I brought that up to Chris O'Brien, who wrote all the famous books about the San Luis Valley, and he sent me a picture that he had of a manta. It looked just like it. I have it here on my computer. And
There's also the prairie dragons.
that's what he called them. He called them prairie
Yeah,
dragons.
they actually, he was doing a tour, and I was actually on it. And there's a little bend when you come in here to Crestone that has like, they say there's a portal or something there. And so there was just people taking.
That's where this picture was taken.
Taking pictures, and one of those prairie dragons was pictured running right through the group.
Yep, I saw that picture. I have that picture.
And so that's, so I was actually there when that
Yeah,
picture was taken.
and if you look real close, it looks just like a manta ray. It's got a little tail, two fins.
It's just
and it's white and translucent. And so the thing is that the paranormal isn't paranormal. The paranormal is this plasma world that surrounds us, and everything that we think is paranormal is actually our interactions with these plasmoids that are everywhere. And so ghosts and almost everything that we think of in the paranormal is actually our interaction with this other reality.
And remember in Vietnam when they first came out with the night vision goggles that were red?
Oh,
they were using the red phosphor type.
Yeah.
They were, they had to change the green because.
Go ahead, tell a story.
Well, basically, I don't know the whole story, but basically they were seeing all kinds of what they would call demonic beings and other weird creatures through these the early night vision that used a red, kind of a red background, and it was really freaking out the soldiers.
Well, and the tail gunners were shooting at them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they had to get rid of them because they were blowing all their ammunition at these creatures that they thought were attacking the helicopters and the planes.
Yeah, but they were like translucent,
translucent.
And then then they went to the green one, and
couldn't see them
they couldn't see them anymore. So somewhere out there, if anybody's got some of the old style early Vietnam,
contact me. We will give you money for it.
Yes.
I will definitely pay to have those red night vision goggles. I really want to see these creatures. And I met this guy one time. He was worked in a construction site, and he got hit by a crane on a hook from a crane. Came by and just hit him on the side of the head really hard. And he had a really bad head concussion from it, and they let him off of work for 2 weeks to recover from it. And he went home to his apartment, and he started seeing these beings that lived in the apartment with him, and humanoid beings, but they were translucent like the plasma beings. And they were walking around in his apartment, and he was totally freaked out and looking at him, and then noticed that he was looking at him, and they were fascinated that he could see them, right? And after a while, he got so flipped out, he just wouldn't look at him anymore, right? And as the concussion healed, right, they dimmed out until they weren't there anymore. And he was very thankful. He didn't want to see him anymore.
He didn't want to see dead people.
Exactly. So, so what is a concussion? Well, it's a slam into your electromagnetic field, and it causes a disruption in it. So I think that there's some connection between, our own electromagnetic field and these critters.
Oh, and if you want to do it yourself, there's a filter you can put on cameras. It's called an 18A filter.
Yeah.
Trevor used this, and what it does, it blocks out all the visible light, but it lets the ultraviolet and the infrared through. And so what he would do, Trevor also did etheric rain engineering.
Yep.
And that would, messing with the etheric energies, would draw these creatures in. And so he'd often photograph them along right next to his devices. And so if you could get that filter, and you can take your own
and do, please do. And what we need to do is create like an online community where we start sharing images and things of all this, because we can literally disrupt science with this kind of discovery.
Yeah, and I was at Trevor's house. He's passed away many years ago, and he was working with some Italian group, And these Italian
Right.
people might be out there and listening, and they've been taking pictures. And they actually, one of the things they took was fascinating. And he showed me some of the pictures, the infrared pictures, and these giant dragon-like creatures.
Yep.
And they would like hover, they'd come and I think it's in his books too. They come and like they had a steel plant.
Yep.
And these giant dragon-like creatures would be flying around like the steel plant, the stuff coming off the steel plant, because I guess they're fascinated by the heat that it was producing. And so they had these guys in Italy had taken just a whole zoo of creatures that they'd pictured in the infrared. And so it's not just blobs, it's like things that actually have forms.
Yeah, and some of them appear to be humanoid. It's very strange. So anyway, it's really important for us to look at this because it not only solves many problems that we have with the paranormal, but um, it's just a whole new science that we don't really understand. And if we can get into communication with these plasmoids, and I do believe that's possible, then we'll have a lot more intelligence about this universe and what's going on here.
Yeah, because now we can see them.
Yeah.
So
And like I said, I think we're going to be able to see them as we go further here, and the galactic energies increase as they're doing every day as we rise up above the plate of the center of the galaxy. We're gonna start seeing these things. We're going to and once if we can get into communication with them, then I think we're going to uncover a whole bunch of things that we have no idea are going on. I really do. I think it's an amazing world.
yes, it is, and it's getting crazier every day.
It is. So anyway, everybody, thanks for watching, and make sure
Oh yeah.
make sure you get your
Yeah.
C60. It's
C60
really important.
power, and shopc60.com is where to go. And
Yep.
and it's amazing. I guess I could tell my little
Well,
story.
why don't you talk
Yeah, I was
about
working on the
C60?
metal oxygen fusion reactor project, and you're going to be hearing about that in the fall when probably commercial
And we did a
devices
show
come
about it.
out. And they had and basically one of the things, a lot of doctors, late doctors and dead professors associated with this research. And I didn't want to end up, or my crew end up, that category. So I went out looking for something for radiation protection, and I came across this stuff called carbon 60, C60 for short. And they give one set of rats got C60, the other didn't. They hit them with a fatal dose of radiation. Pretty much all the
Oh, I
C60,
didn't know that.
yeah, C60 rats live, where the control group, of course, all died.
Ah,
And so when that happened, I got it for my crew and myself. We're all still alive, so I guess it worked for that. But I kept taking it because I had more energy, more mental focus.
yeah.
The afternoon blahs you get when you eat lunch, you want to go to sleep. That kind of went down. And but 7 months after I started taking it, I went in to see my optometrist, and my DRUs, or dry macular degeneration, which I had for years and
Oh,
slowly
really?
progressing, completely disappeared.
Really?
And it's still gone today. I have like perfect retinas. It
Wow,
amazes the optometrist.
that's
And
incredible.
and in the meantime, my friend Gary Rodriguez, he was the electrical engineer on the job, and he had developed severe wet macular degeneration. And he actually had these. We used to be able to post these pictures of the inside of his eyeballs and all kinds of like these white
Yeah,
lesions on it.
yeah.
It was pretty heinous looking. And in that MCT, I made a concoction because everybody was selling it in olive oil.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. And since he had type 2 diabetes, which of course contributed to his condition,
Sure.
I made it in MCT oils, because MCTs are turned by your liver into ketones really rapidly, and ketones are like flex fuel for your cells. So if they can't get glucose, they can always grab the ketones.
What is a ketone?
Ketone is, it's basically it's got a little nitrogen in there, some carbons and stuff. It's like a very short bit of like high fuel that for your cells. And ester ketones, we have some ester ketones we've taken, and which we won't say where. They're it's like super high octane fuel for your brain.
So you're saying that your C60 is in oil that causes the body to create ketones?
Yeah, it creates ketones. These are basic ketones.
Interesting.
There's higher level ones like esters that give it a double boost. But yeah, and that's just in case you have glucose processing issues. And of course, the C60 comes in that process. And so after taking a tablespoon of C60 and MCT oil for a year, his severe wet macular degeneration went completely away. And we used to be able to post the before and after pictures. There's actually a seminar we did for doctors and other health professionals where those are posted behind a paywall, of course. And so it's because it's private, and you can do that in a private world. But and also his type 2 diabetes went subclinical.
That's
And
important.
the main thing, C60 is what is called an SOD mimic. That's superoxide dismutase, which takes care of the most damaging oxidative radical in the body and the main damaging one in the mitochondria, which is superoxide. That's an oxygen with an extra electron. And so if you think about, oxidative stress is your body rusting. So an oxygen with an extra electron is the most rusting thing that you could possibly have. You have a little wind going on, but and so that's that's kind of what its niche is. And so like your body has 4 big antioxidants, CoQ10. You should be supplementing for that. Ubiquitol is also that, and also the glutathione. They have glutathione, which they now have ways of sublingually or different ways of and liposomal, which you can get your glutathione in. But there's really nothing for SOD and catalase, which takes care of the superoxide ion until C60 came along. It's a mimic. So by doing all those 3, then you kind of covered the key antioxidants that make the Krebs cycle function in your body, that's in your mitochondria that make the ATP, the energy molecule of the cell. So oxygen breathing. So it's super critical. And once you have that done, then of course health goes way up. And I have my experience, Gary's experience, Jay's
My own
experience.
experience, yeah. And also it's has superconductive properties, right?
Well, it has some interesting things. And C60 is not just made in for people. It also has a large number of industrial things. It's like the largest object that's ever had that wave particle duality.
Right.
They tunneled it actually through the gold barrier. You put up like maybe a barrier of gold, 10 atoms thick. There's no way to get through it. You bounce trillions of C60 atoms against it, and all of a sudden one appears on the other side. It tunneled through. So that's one of those weird quantum things. And that's also another. We use sublimated C60. Sublimation is a purification process like evaporation. It's when a solid turns into a gas, then back into a solid. And that gives you really, really high 99.99% purity.
That's right.
And a lot of people out
Alchemy.
there use solvent-based C60, and they use methylbenzene, a known carcinogen, to purify their C60, and then they'll put that, and then they try to purify it, and to a certain extent they can get it out, like by repeated baking, but you never get rid of all the methylbenzene, and then they have that in their product. So when you want to go for looking for a C60 product, you want 99.99%, which is the purest you can get, and you want sublimated, because then there's still methylbenzene in there. And of course we put it in all organic oils, and we also have third-party testing. That's also, I think we're the only one that does that. Our products, once we make them, we send them to a third-party tester, and they test it for purity and concentration of C60. And so when you have one of our products, it's safe and effective because we have third-party testing, like you should on any product.
You should, yeah. In fact, I can't believe they aren't doing that. So anyway, it's Purple Power, and I'll put a link to it, and everybody should be taking it. I think it's really going to be the thing in the future that science is going to say, oh, this stuff really works. And it's not a vitamin, it's not a supplement, it's completely different.
Oh, and it's also the only antioxidant that increases athletic performance. We've had guys go from mid-pack to champions in their field, and horses too, but I won't name any names.
Oh yeah.
And it's not banned. It's not banned by any athletic.
Pets.
Yeah, it's not banned by any athletic organization.
I have a cat, almost 14 years old, and she just got diagnosed with cancer, and I've started giving it to her every day in her food and in her water in drops. And I'll be able to tell you what happens here in the next few weeks. So she has a high metabolism, so we'll be able to see if it works or not. So let's hope. Keep my cat for another 14 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good with the gray haired crowd.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, speaking.
Wait, we got our visitor.
Come here.
Here's the star of the show. Come here.
Come here.
Come here.
Come here.
Come here. Up you go. Up you go. Hey, girl. Say hi. Say hi. Hey.
There we go.
Yeah.
This is Aurora. Aurora is the best dog ever.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.